And two. Hello, our friends. Welcome back to another episode of the State of Social podcast. It is episode 15 today, and we are covering, I'm excited about today's topics because I think we're covering like the underbelly of social media management a little bit. Today, we're going to talk about the idea of, as a social media manager or someone who works in social, especially as an agency team, the difference and distinction between positioning ourselves as content strategists as opposed to just regular social media managers, and what the difference in that language means, and B, our take on how we decide to position ourselves as an agency, which, spoiler alert, changes often in our world. So we'll talk a little bit about that and what it means as a social media manager or someone who works in social on a very tactical level in terms of what you're doing day to day. And in a related topic, we are also going to be covering some social media horror stories. So one thing about working in social is that there are high highs and low lows, and there are things that only social media managers will understand that can be challenging and also recurring, to say the least. So we are going to dive into some of our favorite stories anonymously shared that we have seen from a page that we all sort of religiously follow, Sippin' Social Media Tea, or Social Tea, I think. I might have butchered their name. And we'll also talk about others that we've heard in our day. So those are our two big topics to cover today. And then we're also going to do a little just funsy brain rot segment at the end, because it's been, I don't know about y'all out there, but February has been a crazy month, I think, professional, personal, the world. It's been long. So my brain is bleeding out of my ears. So I think that'll be a fun way to end off our Friday segment today.
I'm actually coming off a fresh procedure this morning of my lobotomy. So
good.
It's been one of those weeks. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think we need that.
I don't even know what day it is. So we're in great shape over here, everyone.
It's Tuesday.
We're thriving.
You still got the whole week ahead of you. Before we start, I do want to give a shout out to our friends over at PBS, the social managers that were in charge of the partnership with Michael the Librarian. If you've seen him on TikTok, he has been taking hearts by storm, showing his library content and normalizing it for us to go back to the library with our library card, even if we owe dues from when we were 10, as I do. And so if you haven't seen, he was a librarian, and now he is the resident librarian for PBS, and they have finally had a partnership after months and months and months of people commenting that they definitely need to work with him, and they have. And so I just want to say big shout out, because we know some of the social managers over there that were in charge of making that partnership happen. So love to see when peers are doing amazing things in the industry, but also just a big shout out as a win on social. We love to see brands when they do the right thing with their budgets and when they listen to people online. I think that's the most powerful thing. So kudos to them.
Hey, it's been so fun to watch. And cool to know the faces behind it. So, all right. So our first topic of the day, there is a funny thing about working in social media, which is that when you say you work in social media, that can mean like 100 different things. Some people choose, and when I say people, I mean, even if you're like hired internally to work, as the social media manager or something, social strategist at a brand or an organization. So this applies to in-house and also people who freelance, agencies, people who work exclusively in social media. We have a problem, which is that there is a real challenge around like naming convention and explaining what we do in a succinct way, because what each individual person, agency, team, whatever does in social can very drastically vary. It varies very much from one person to the next. And that's because, first of all, social is like a massive, massive piece of the communications pie. And to say you work in social is really not like a fair articulation of your role, because you might be just a video editor. You might be someone who just like does video content. You might be somebody who specializes in one platform. Like there are a lot of people who work in social media, for example, who would say that they only work in Instagram or even Pinterest, which is a whole other can of worms, because a lot of people would tell you that Pinterest is more of a search tool than it is a social tool. And from our perspective, because we are a full service agency, so we do a lot of different things for a lot of different clients, the task of reducing down what we do, who we are, into like a succinct title has been something that we have gone back and forth as a team. We've gone back and forth on this idea a lot, because we could say we're a social media agency, which is true, but that doesn't really speak to the actual work that we do on behalf of clients. And there are things that we want to do more of versus others in terms of tasks around social media, management, as it were. Also, this is not even really the topic, but it's something I come back to like every 3 months and feel compelled to make a LinkedIn post about, which is that I don't think, I will preface this conversation to say, I don't think there's any like 3 or 4 word title descriptor that will ever encapsulate what someone who works in social media really does. And that is a problem, because there's a perception that social media is easy to do. There is this age old straight up lie that like, oh, an intern can do it. Of course an intern can do it, but that doesn't encapsulate all of the different like sort of elements and skills that are needed to be successful in social media. And it absolutely doesn't get to the core of what social media managers tactically do. Like when we sit down at a computer or on our phone every day, what we're actually doing, because we cover so much ground: copywriting, video editing, graphic production and design, search optimization in terms of like hashtags and keywords and things like that. Did I say copywriting? Copywriting. Strategic
research.
planning, competitor research, data analytics and review. Sometimes customer service. If you've got a client and they have customers who reach out to them via social media for support, PR, reputation management, advertising, if you're doing social ads, like the list goes on and on and on. And so then to say I'm a social media manager, for me as someone who does it every day, like that falls flat, and it also doesn't specify like, well, what in social media do I do, and what does our team specialize in, what do we like to do?
Yeah.
So all that to say, there are really fascinating conversations happening all over the place in the world of social about the distinction between how we talk about ourselves. And one piece of this puzzle is the notion of delineating when you say I'm a social media manager versus when you say I am a content creator or a content specialist or a social content strategist, and the rise in that distinction. Because I do think, I'd be interested in y'all's thoughts on this, but I think I hear that a lot more versus just social media manager. I hear like, I'm a content specialist, I'm a content strategist. And I think there's a lot to be said about why that's happening. And we have thoughts too around why we are shifting our thinking towards talking about our team and our expertise as content first versus management first. But just to open it up, are you all seeing this as well out in the world as social media mavens? And what is that conversation looking like?
Yes, I am seeing this. And personally, my opinion on like a social media manager versus a strategist or a content creator is, and this isn't in no way diminishing what a social media manager does, but to me, a social media manager gives a presence of a digital footprint, whereas a strategist or a creator is impacting your digital footprint, not just giving you a presence and like giving you an existence in the digital space. And I think that's the difference, because we talk a lot about we should come up with a term for this kind of, it's like the MLM of social media management, but it's not that, but it's like these, oh, here's your 6-month social media plan with my Etsy download. And what they're giving you is really templatized Canva templates that you're only going to be able to change so much because you only have so much knowledge and, whatever. It's this, and I'm not saying all social media managers are that, but I think that's often what people think when they hear that term. When in reality, it is a bunch of things. So that's why, like, for me personally, it's important to distinguish us as a social media strategy agency, because we're more than just like going on your accounts every day and commenting. And like, yes, the management part is definitely an important part of it, but you're just creating the digital presence at that point. There's so much more that goes into making an impact on social and being a thought leader and insert goal here. And I just think that that's the distinction. So I didn't really answer your question. I kind of
No,
answered
you
my
did.
own and like, what is the difference? But that is what I'm seeing and why I feel it's important to make that call. Because when people hear that don't know what a social media manager encapsulates, they hear that and they're like, oh, great. By the way, I was thinking I have this like collection of art and I was thinking of starting an Instagram account. And what do you think I should do? And it's like, yes, like I technically could give you and I could help you there. That's what I do, but like it's not that, you know? It's not just giving
Yeah.
you a credit, it's helping you with your account.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think like it is possible, and you might see this more in-house probably if I had to like make a distinction, but it is possible to be a social media manager and you aren't actually creating content. Like there are
Yes.
worlds where the social media manager is actually occupying what I would call the like actual management role of social media, which is you're not necessarily creating content, you're aggregating it from other parts of the business or from other areas. Like down to the nitty gritty, like maybe you have a full marketing team with a graphics designer and video editor. So you're not even necessarily creating those assets. I think if we're talking about if we're talking about the fact that there's like all these different things that we can call ourselves and different understandings of what each of those are from like the one person to the next, if you were to ask me, I would say like a true social media manager, if I had to give you the job description of what that person would be, to me, it's they start with strategy and presence perspective. So they're thinking about where can we show up on social? Where is our target audience? Where do we need to be sharing the messages that we want to share? And establishing those presences, and then the end of it, which is cultivating all of that content together. Managing your editorial calendar for social, and then distributing that content. I think a true social media manager is someone who just does the front and the back end, and the middle is the task of like creating content, actually developing the content itself is outsourced a little bit, and that's typically like with internal teams. So like you say we want to be on Instagram and LinkedIn and we want to talk about these things, and then you're part of the strategic thinking around what that should look like. So you come up with ideas, high level ideas, structures for content. You help to think about how to take what exists and turn it into something social friendly, but likely you're not actually doing that part of it. You're putting that ask out to other team members, like a video editor, a graphic designer, a product owner or manager who knows the actual content a lot better than you might. And so you ask them to weigh in. And then what you're doing is sort of cultivating all of that together, puzzle piecing it so that you're making sure it's, effective and optimized. And then you're putting it out and analyzing the performance and starting the cycle all over again, right? Going back to the strategy, understanding how you can refine the asks that you're making of the people who are providing content to you, how to give the graphic design feedback on the types of images that are performing better than another, how to ask for the cut downs of like longer video that you need for social. But your hands are not so much in the tactical content creation because you're leveraging the support of about a lot of other experts to get that done. And I want to be clear, I am not saying this is the wrong way to do social media management. I think that's if that's what you want to do, and that is actually what you end up doing, then that's a very fair it's a very fair label to put on what you do, to say I'm a social media manager. I manage the strategy and the output of that strategy. But on the flip side, if you are someone who is getting your hands dirty in the content creation, you are in some way, shape, or form, to your point, Raya, embedded in the content. You're designing the graphics, you're writing it, it's your voice in some way, like quite literally, maybe you're on video. You're, actually like a part of you is in that content. Then I think you fall into the content creator bucket a little more firmly, and you might be someone who is a social media manager and a content creator, but it's worthwhile to make the distinction, because when you tack on the content creation part, now you're adding a whole bucket of other tasks and skills that you have to tap into on a day-to-day basis to do that part of your job, which might look like scripting video, filming that video, editing that video in some way, creating, if you're making a swipe through, it's not that you're asking someone else to tell you what goes on those graphics, you're coming up with it on your own, right? And I think part of my because honestly, I get really frustrated by this idea that like it's not easy to say what we do. Like when I say we, I mean like us right here, like my team, Kylie Social, the Hive. I get frustrated because like when people ask me what we do or I explain what we do, I feel like I've never fully given the like depth and breadth of what we actually are doing on a day-to-day basis, no matter how hard I try. And what I don't want to do is sit there and like yap on about our job, like in all this detail. But like when people say, what happened to me today? I was at an appointment. What did you do? I said, social media. And as I said it, I said, now she's going to either think I'm an influencer or like a YouTuber, or like maybe she thinks like, yeah, like I work in social, like for a corporation or something. So like a little, like way less creative than what we actually do. And it's so like, it grinds my gears because I'm like, that didn't encapsulate what we do at all. And then I can, even if I say like, oh, well, we're a social media agency, so we work with a lot of clients to like help them with their social presence. Like that doesn't even begin to cut it, you know?
Yeah.
Because we are, and the point of talking about this is because this is something that we personally as a team come up against all the time, because let me be clear, we have clients that are absolutely full service management clients that we work with on a day-to-day basis, where we are occupying that traditional social media manager role. We've planned their strategy. We help them execute their strategy by requesting content from them and things that we need to actually put social posts out. And then we do the doing of putting out the social posts and doing outbound engagement and helping them to grow their platforms, et cetera, et cetera. And depending on the client, we are maybe also a content creator for them. There are some clients where we are far more involved in the content creation than others. But that's not the only thing that we do. We also do a ton of other work in other spaces that's a lot harder to encapsulate. So it's not fair to call us just a social media agency. And I will be candid, like if you look on our website, I think today we call ourselves a social media strategy and content agency. And you might think that's like goofy or like too clunk, whatever. But we did that on purpose because we first of all, we really enjoy content creation, like getting hands-on with clients. So filming, editing, producing, scripting, building series, building whole new content avenues that happen to go out on social, but that, also have implications for like long form content, blog content, et cetera, for clients. And we wanted to be clear about that in the way that we talk about ourselves, because I think importantly, not every social media agency does that. There are a lot of social media agencies that actually don't offer the content creation portion of the work. They are more of that traditional social management where they're going to help you build a strategy, and then they're going to make a bunch of requests to you about what you need to provide as the business or the client back to them so that they can execute the strategy according to, what they've planned. And then they'll do all the doing.
Can I be clear though? They'll do all the doing at one point used to be, oh, go hire a photographer, get shots of this, have a graphic designer make these things. And then it was like, bada boom, bada bing. Now, if you come in here and say, okay, you got to incorporate video, they're either going to freeze up because they don't know how to make their own video, or they're going to look for a video production company, which is going to charge them way too much money for what they're looking for. And so arguably, you can't really just go and do that anymore, because you need a content agency that's going to know social first video. How do you make that? Short form video. How do you make that? And so that's the inherent value of like a full, more than just a social media agency or manager, somebody that is the content creator aspect. Because anymore, what does that even look like for you to go as a person and turn that around for some manager? You wouldn't even know where to begin nowadays.
And what's funny is I think within our own community of social media managers, there's definitely a divide in people's opinions about what is right in terms of the service set to offer as a social manager. And I actually think we have like I never would have thought we'd fall into the hot take category, but I think we sort of do have a hot take, which is there are plenty of fantastic and very good at their jobs social media managers who will flat out say, if the service you're selling is social media management, you should not also be being asked to be the content creator, because that's not social management, it's content creation.
Right.
And they draw that line in the sand to say that I purposefully am saying we are not content creators because that's not what we want to do or focus on doing or do well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other side of the coin, which is, I think, where we fall, which I and I'll explain why I think it's a hot take, is that we intentionally position ourselves as both because for two reasons. We enjoy that part. Not everybody does. We really like that work. I think I can speak for the group to say we like the creativity, the ideation, the playing, the testing. For me, it's like the testing. I just love seeing, like, if we try something different, how audiences respond.
Yeah.
We love it. And also it differentiates us from other, services that other people offer. So that's another reason we lean into it. But the reason I think it's a hot take is because, and the other side of the coin, who tries to not do the content creation part, is not wrong about this. It is extremely hard to properly charge to be both the strategist and the content creator. I will tell you that right now. We have done hundreds of proposals in our day as a team, which means hundreds of ways that I have personally tried to figure out how to price what we do so that it recognizes our value and our time spend, and also is still in a price point that's comfortable to clients who, to be clear, are not thinking about the distinction between management and content creation, because when they see social as people who exist outside of the social space every day, they see the final product, which we know involves two major pieces: the management and strategy, and then the content creation and execution.
Yeah.
So it's very, very hard to price, knowing that what, our end user, our customers, first of all, shouldn't have to care / don't want to know the nitty gritty really about how it gets done. They just want what they want, which is a service provided, right? But what I know is that when we pitch ourselves to new clients, and we are pitching a project that does involve us being both the management role and the creator role, I know that our prices might sit higher because I'm factoring in the two channels of work that we're doing. Whereas there are other freelancers, agencies, etc., who may not delineate that and simply use that blanket term of social media manager and call it that. And they're offering 100 million and one services within that. And they are pricing themselves maybe lower because they're just, thinking about it as one service, per hour or per month or whatever. So now I'm on a CEO tangent, but that's a challenge, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to win business. And if you're a freelancer, if you're someone who's doing this solo, you're trying to figure out how to price your services, right? So
right.
I also don't think there is a clear answer about right or wrong, but I do think that this is something that we're thinking about very intimately in terms of trying to get the language right and trying to figure out how to educate around the difference and be able to delineate that distinction. Because if we want to charge clients accordingly and we want to talk to them about the difference between what you do or don't get when you work with us based on if we are acting as a content creator or not, we can't have that conversation until we are on the same page with potential clients about why there's a difference and why there is a cost, possibly even a more a content creation theoretically should cost more than social media management.
It should. I agree.
Because it's the actual labor of the content creation, which is ultimately the heart of it.
That goes into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the skill is built upon years of experience. So it's yes, you could edit a video for social in 1 hour, and then you could spend an hour doing social media management. But the two things being done in that hour, incomparable impact.
Yeah.
Time spent, energy, skill. And it's really not, because that's not saying one thing's harder than the other. It's just
no,
one thing takes a lot more time to curate content in general, content that works, content that performs.
I'm trying to, I've realized we're just waxing poetic. So trying to make this tactical for someone listening, around the distinction. my thoughts are this. Number one, I would take a moment, if you are someone who works in social media, to think about how you naturally describe the work that you do, what kind of title you were given or give yourself in the work that you do, and do a little self-evaluation. Do you think does it reflect what you actually do? Do you feel comfortable with it? Do you feel like when you say it says what you mean? Or do you think maybe there's a distinction that you could be making so that you could either tell your quote unquote story more clearly, explain what you do more clearly in a succinct way, or even reposition yourself? Like, are you thinking about, as you're thinking about what you actually do, also think about what do you enjoy most? What do you feel like you take away the most value from? And is there a way to zero in on that? And does that maybe differentiate how you talk about yourself? So maybe you are someone like us who says you're a social media manager, but what you really find joy in is the actual content creation process and creating assets and filming video and editing it and having it approved and getting to see what it does in the wild and see how audiences respond. If that's you, maybe you think about shifting your title or name nomenclature to something more like content creator or content strategist versus just social media manager. The other thing I would say is if this is something that you resonate with, this idea of like my title or what I do isn't accurately reflected in all the things that I actually do in any given day, there is nothing wrong with thinking about deleting service offerings from what you do, right? Like I think the beautiful thing about working in social media right now is there is a market for any variation of social media management. You might have to be more candid and be more upfront with marketing yourself and identifying your services and how you talk about what you offer to potential clients, because you want to. The more clear you are in that, the more clear the folks who come back to you to ask for support are going to be, because they're going to understand what you do a lot better. To this day, we still get requests for website redesign. That's never been a social media manager's task, but for some reason that's just linked in people's brains. So like, that's on us. We have to continually re-educate that like no part of what we do is website design, right? So, but you as an individual, as a freelancer, someone who works in social, though you may need to look in different spaces or talk about what you do differently if you do niche down or kind of narrow down your offerings, the great thing about the landscape right now is that someone needs exactly what you do. There are people who are going to want the whole suite, the whole kit and caboodle, full service, every platform's you be our video host, etc., start front to back. But if that doesn't bring you joy and if that doesn't feel like it hones in on your skills, you don't have to offer that version of social media management. You can offer strategy only. You can offer content creation only. You can do, you don't ever have to do month over month management. You could do, short-term projects only, where you're just helping to build a strategy and then you're handing it off, right? Like that. And this is all things that we're thinking about in how we refine the way that we support clients. So
yeah,
it's okay if you don't have the answer, basically.
I'm also interested to hear what other people have to say about that. So any listeners that have a hard opinion on, what does one mean over the other, or if you think that they're the one and the same, open to opinions. I want to hear it.
Same, because also I recognize my opinions change on this ever so slightly all the time. So I'm curious too. Yeah. But I will transition us just to say into, before we're going to take an ad break, but before we get there, I will say the reason we wanted to talk about this and our second topic together, I think today, is because one of the real important elements of identifying if you're going to work in social, what brings you joy, what makes you feel impactful, and what makes you proud to like do the work that you do and get up every day and do that work, is like it's very important to identify what that is, because the rate of burnout and stress in working in social media is really higher than I think in other spaces of job functionality, because we are expected to be so many things and do so many things and continuously be an expert in a space that changes faster than humans can often keep up with it. Both the experts and the average person who is just who has their own understanding of social media. And, from the client side, that leads to expectation management and things from if you service people with social media skills. And the rate of burnout is high, and the things that the pushback, the challenges that we encounter are like all over the map because everybody comes to the table about social media with probably with either strong opinions or no opinions, or like varied expectations that are really hard to manage from person to person or client to client. And so that's why we're also going to talk about these sort of like horror stories or confessions from social media managers, because they are all too common in our industry. And we need to talk about them more candidly because it's a real thing. Doesn't mean we don't love our jobs, but like some of the shit we hear is serious. So that is where we're headed. But first, an ad break.
An ad break. And we were talking about social media managers versus people who create content in the social media space. And so whether you are a content creator or somebody who is trying to break into that space, we've got something super exciting to share with you. This March, we are partnering with Veed, actually. We are just one of their affiliates, and they gave us this coupon. So we wanted to give you the exclusive offer, pass it along, because why gatekeep something that we love? Veed is an online video editing platform that is accessible from your desktop. It has a mobile app that I don't recommend. I would just use the desktop, but you can edit it very easily from anywhere, and your team can easily go on and edit the same files that you are editing without needing to share any files. It's all right there. Let me get back to the script here. It really went off. Why do we love Veed? It's simple. It's a game changer for content creators. It's an intuitive platform that makes video editing a breeze, empowering you to create high quality content that stands out on social. No degree required. So what is the coupon code? It is all caps, Springtime Veed. That is going to give you a massive 30% off, either if you sign up for the annual plan, 30% off the year, or if you're just trying to go for 1 month to test it out, you can get 30% off your first month. But Springtime, VEED, Springtime Veed, all caps. We'll put it in the description down below. Go try Veed out. We love it a lot. We use it a lot. And our clients love it because it's easy to share the content that we've made with them for them to easily comment on and make edits. So go check it out. Veed.
And I would just say, Veed came into our lives many years ago for the express reason that we were trying to figure out an easy way to caption videos, to add them to social media. So if that is something that you do on the regular, I cannot recommend Veed enough for that purpose, but it is also so much more than that. It's very sophisticated, but that's just one great example of how we use the platform. It auto generates subtitles, and then you can change the captions very easily. And I think it's the easiest platform to edit on.
Yes.
No shade to the other mobile editing apps out there, but I think it's really hard to add captions on that stuff. So it really helps to have a desktop option that's also accessible on browser, so the whole team can collaborate on content and, like Rhea said, sharing with clients for their easy approval. We love Veed. Turns out we're power users of the platform. So we're not just saying this, we actually are in like the top some percent of people who use Veed every day because we use it for literally everything.
Literally everything. We're in an open relationship with Veed and CapCut. We definitely would say we have some loves for other platforms, like Paige said, but Veed has always been there for us. She's been our original girlfriend. We've been with her the longest. Her tech team has heard from us many a time. We've been on video calls with them. God, they were literally all over the country. They were like in New Zealand and whatnot. And we're like, this is what you could do to better your platform. Who are we other than avid users, chronically online, truly, by our Tumblr? Moving into our next segment, we are going to talk about horror stories, confessions from the Sippin' on Social tea. So I don't know if Michaela, would you like to read one of them out loud, and we'll just go from there, and we'll see how much time we have to go over all of them.
Yep. So this is a screenshot from one of Sippin' Social Tea's posts. I'm going to read it. It says, I've recently started a new job and took over their social media, which has been inactive since my predecessor left 4 months ago. It's week 3 and the CEO told me our social media sucks so bad that their 17-year-old niece is coming into the office 2 days a week now to help me because she knows this stuff, and one of her TikTok videos went viral.
The way I would resign so fast. That's
I just thought that was crazy.
Actually, honestly, that's the classic case of, that's fine. Let her. Let her. Let's watch how that goes.
This is also illustrating a classic conundrum with social media, which is that social is like instantaneous. There's even features of social that are 24-hour cycles, stories and things like that. But making a difference to your social metrics, like changing the actual output of your social towards a goal, that does not happen in one day. It doesn't even happen in 1 week. This is why when we work with clients, like we have to very clearly set the expectation that, when we're testing a new strategy, for example, we're not going to make extreme changes to it within the first 2 weeks, because that's not long enough to know if these things are even moving the needle. Even 1 month that's like the minimum point at which you could start to review the impact of changing your social strategy in some way, which is a really challenging thing because social has bred our brains for instant gratification and instant feedback, because there's part of it that is, but to change the tides in terms of like measuring social's impact to a business goal, that does not happen overnight, and it doesn't even happen like in the short term, which is it's a huge challenge. But nothing is worse than when someone basically says this young person can do it just because they're young. Which, don't get me wrong, is like the origin story of my career in social media, because it's how I wound up being like a social anything, because I was always the youngest person in the room. People would just look at me and be like, what do we do with Facebook? I'd be like, I don't know. I'll get back to you. And then go Google for like an hour.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important distinction though, because just because I was young didn't mean I didn't automatically know. And that it's not because I wasn't a user. Of course I use social media personally.
Yeah.
But the thing we say all the time is being a personal social media user does not pre-qualify you for being a social media strategist or manager for a business or brand, because they have goals and a different audience than you as the individual does. Right.
And let me say one thing too. If I was in that position as the person that wrote that, yes, that would be very annoying, and my ego might get the best of me before I could actually approach this level-headedly. But truly, if you're in that position, sit down with that person when that 17-year-old comes in and say like, okay, what ideas do you have? And let's merge together to implement them. Because if it's all trend ideas or audios to participate in and like funny meme ha-has, that's great, but it's only so good. And then great, let me use my expertise to like bubble in the rest of it.
Right.
But there's an example of a trend going around right now that I was actually going to say something to you, MK, because I think it'd be funny to hop on for one of our clients. But it's like we let HGTV just did it, and now I've seen a bunch of individual creators do it. They said we let our intern edit a TikTok to post, and we said they could do anything. And they took an episode of HGTV's House Hunters, and they just clipped the parts where the people said house every time. And so it was like house, 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 house. And it was just like, jumping. So it was like, oh, our intern did this. And then somebody else did it. And it was like, all right, we let our intern edit this video. And it was just the breathing in every
I saw
time
that
they would
one
like
too.
breathe in before they started talking. And so like, that's a very funny idea. And who's to say some young person can't come up with that and say like, oh, I think this would play well because of this reason, even though it doesn't have anything to do with our social media goals at large. Sometimes you're so in it, especially if you're an in-house manager, like it's hard to think of funny, high level, like, not so serious stuff like that. So maybe it is valuable to bring in a 17-year-old niece or nephew 2 times a week. But like, if you're really in a situation like that, throw it back on them and say, okay, how can we work together? Because there is power in young creators. I don't want to diminish that.
Like that.
Sorry if I got
Okay,
pushy
so
there.
the second post is, I told one of my clients that I needed pictures of an employee for a work anniversary post. The employee in question sent back a selfie of her in a bikini with her kids and 11 photos of just her kids, both of whom are minors. None of this is appropriate for a brand account. WTF. I just thought this was funny and like also relatable in terms of just not knowing what to do with certain pieces of content that we've received from certain clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that one too because it's like a classic example. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I know we've had encounters where we've asked for something and then you realize you don't have to, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have to specify that, like, they're not going to send me something that won't be what I can put out there. And you just assume people have that thought process. and then they don't. So I'm sure for that person, they were probably like, okay, next time I know to send parameters when I ask for a picture that it has to be, family friendly, something you'd put on LinkedIn, not
Right.
something you'd put on your profile picture.
I just think it was interesting, like a social media manager being put in those spaces of navigating how exactly to talk to someone or rework that whole situation and manage it. It's just funny that you wouldn't think that we have to deal with stuff like that, but we do.
I like to think about a skit. What is that lady, the HR lady that's going around
Corporate
right now?
Natalie or
No.
oh
No. She's like, it has HR meetings, and she's like,
yeah.
okay, so that's actually
Yeah. I know
your
exactly who it
bereavement
is.
policy. I forget who it is, or her name, but I'd like to see a skit play out where it's like the social media manager has to be like, okay, I asked Susan to send me pictures, and this is what she sent me, and then they have a meeting where she has to address it as the HR person. Is it HR or am I missing the niche? It's something. I
No,
can picture her
she's like
clearly.
a manager.
Yeah, and she's been like all over. I saw her on like the Today Show or something recently. But anyway,
Corporate
that was a
Aaron.
complete
Corporate Aaron.
Aaron. Yeah,
Love
I'd like
her.
corporate Aaron to have a say on that. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's
The third one is just had a colleague from a department that has nothing to do with marketing mansplain my job to me for a full hour and even detailed what makes a successful social media post. I told them I was fully aware of best practices, but they just kept going. I have a master's in marketing and years of experience. ...
I think we've all
all
been
too
there.
often, man. All too often. The push and pull of social media is this at the end of the day. When you talk to anyone about social media, whether it's in a business conversation or if you work in social, like informally, when someone says, what do you do? And you have to like talk about what you do. Social media for the average user means something very different than somebody who works in social media. And the unfortunate impact of that is that everyone has access to social as the average user, but 90% of those people are not they don't have a goal around their social media presence. They're using it for personal sharing or for something sort of specific that they personally, maybe, I don't know, they might be like a blogger or something, like have like little recipes. I don't know. The point is they're not trying to back social media goals into business goals and then deploy the tools accordingly, right? So it causes this real issue where if you are in a meeting with someone who doesn't work in social but has, is giving you feedback, you're either going to get folks like that who have their own tunnel vision perception of social media, how it works from their personal point of view, which does not translate to the business point of view, or the flip side, they're someone who doesn't like social or doesn't use social. So they are operating at like a negative understanding of how social media works. Very rarely do you get someone who doesn't also work in marketing who has the same business backed understanding of social media as you. Like it would require, like if, like for example, like maybe you get lucky and there's someone who works in finance who also is like a personal blogger on the side, so maybe they have a little knowledge about like using social to like reach a target audience or like expand on a goal, but most of the time that's not true. So you're either going to get the people who mansplain to you or the people who have no idea or have a false perception of things because they're not an average user, and both suck. Both suck because no one wants to have to justify what they do all the time. I don't even have a good answer for this one, like in terms of like how to fix it, because I have never figured out that either. Sometimes you just have to let people talk to feel heard, I think is the lesson here.
I always like to think when this is something I would do after the fact. I would never be able to think of this in the moment when this is happening. But I've always just have like a backup topic that you could just unleash at any moment and go deep dive down on and just throw it back to them. So as soon as they're done talking about that, they're going to expect you to like come back at them with like, like-minded conversation about this topic they think that they're starting a discussion around, and then just throw it back and be like, so did you know that when the Johnstown flood happened, Nobody could escape, and they were all just kind of like in their little lanes and like in their little houses. And when the flood came through, it brought mudslides too. And like you just start and you just go and then don't stop for like 10 minutes, just as long as they took, and then wait and see what they do. Just really throw them off, you know? I've never been able to put that into play, but I feel like that's a good tactic. It has nothing to do with teaching the mansplainer a lesson, but at least it would amuse you, you know?
To that end, if I was really bold, like using the finance example, that would be the equivalent of me being like, yeah, like I hear you and all, but like what works for me is I don't check my bank account every month. I just wait till I get an overdraft notification and then I like move my money around, and I save a little bit, but then like if I overdraft, then I just like use my savings and like make up for that, and like it works for me. So like you should do that for the company. And they would then have the opportunity to feel the level of how ludicrous it is to be told,
right?
Like, because that what remains the same there is like, if I'm telling you that's what works for me, you can't tell me I'm wrong, but it doesn't mean you have to take that and apply it, because it would literally not work. So, you know.
Love that.
And I get that we all feel a little overconfident sometimes, but to not have the self-awareness to know when to stop yourself. Paige and I were just having a conversation this week about how we have a client who is a comedian, and I, in the shower the other day, came up with a funny bit that I thought she should write. And I had the thought of, should I like reach out to her and share this idea with her? She would love this. And then I was like, no. I'm the social media manager. Why would she want to receive that from me? So sometimes you have to have the self-awareness to be like, yeah, I do want to insert myself here where I don't belong. So then you just go tell someone else who it won't offend, maybe. Just like tell the little rats in there to shut up sometimes, you know?
Know your role.
Specifically men. Just...
All right. So last but not least, we have post number 4. I'm a traditional PR guy and work at a startup. I had no real social media experience, but my boss wouldn't hire anyone. They sent me on a 3-day course and then told me to grow our social media platforms by 100 to 400% in a year. When I asked for a budget, they only said to do it organically, of course. Okay, ...
So many yikes here. Yeah. The first yikes. What does growing the social media presence do for the business? That would be my first question back to them. And that's not even snarky. That's very serious. Like, what does having an increased social following mean for our business goals? And if there is no answer for that, then that's already something to focus on, right? Especially, I've been having a real gripe with follower growth these days. Don't get me wrong. It is obviously a good metric to measure because it tells you people like you enough to stick around. And that's, of course, helpful to know. But it cannot be understated how much change has happened to social media platforms over the last few years that allows a user to consume a social platform in its entirety without ever really following somebody. It used to be that if you didn't follow anyone on Instagram, there would be no content in your Instagram feed.
Right.
There was no way around that. That was just the truth, right? Like you see the content from the people you follow. Today, that is not true. It's not true on any platform. Algorithmically, you're being identified as a user who is interested in certain topics based on the engagement activities that you are making every day, the posts you like, the things you comment on, the things you personally are sharing. And based on what you're telling the system, they're identifying other content that comes from people you do not follow, that you may have never heard of, and they're serving it to you as recommended content. And that's not a small part of the puzzle anymore. It's a huge part of it. So what does the follower metric tell us anymore, right? It's not the same. It's still important to track and it's still useful, but it does not tell the story of X amount of people care about what I'm sharing and want to engage with what I'm sharing, because there's nothing that precludes them from engaging and enjoying your content and seeing your content anymore. They do not have to be a follower in order to get what they need from you. And that is really important because user behavior dictates the platform. And if users are not being forced to follow accounts, the overall rate of people following things is going to drop. So I would say all this to say, asking for 400% growth in followers, why? Does it matter? And are you considering that you don't actually need to grow your followers so much as you need to grow your engagement and the response you get from an audience, because your audience now includes people who maybe do not follow you and likely do not follow you.
Yes.
So that's one where I want to like run through a wall on, because what the heck?
I would also say when I hear a ask like that from a higher up, that tells me that they're looking to subsidize like finances or sales in some way, which if they're hoping to grow their account that way so that they'll sell more, that's never the answer. And we talk about that all the time, that business goals and social media goals are not the same. They support each other, but they are not the same. And so I would ask more questions. I would both ask more questions about like, okay, to your point, why do you want all that? Because are you going to have false hopes? Like, what if you did get all those followers and then what you're actually looking for is not going to happen? So let's actually look at the business goal. And then 2, I would also like to see any other department that was asked to perform those types of analytics in that short amount of time at the same rate, because I bet you they did not do that to their salespeople, and they didn't do that to their whatever other departments there are. That's very unrealistic.
Yeah, great point.
Also, a 3-day course by whom? By whom? What is that? Says
Right.
who?
Yeah, not only that, like, would you expect like your front desk admin to learn the job in 3 days? Would you expect your accountant to learn the job in 3 days?
Yeah.
And
you
then
send
also drive growth?
Or like somebody to go learn how to lay concrete and then expect them to like build a structurally sound. Like, come on.
So
That's crazy.
that's a wrap on that. If you've
Sorry to
had,
all those people.
truly, if anyone out there has a social media horror story working in this field, feel free to share it with us. Our accounts will be in the description below. You can reach out on Instagram. So yeah, let us know and we'll read it for the next episode or an upcoming episode.
Oh, that was a good segment. I like that.
Yeah.
I know this has like been a really long episode so far, so we don't have to do a long brain rot segment, but we'll just throw this prompt around and we'll see who says what. Our brain rot question of the day: how do you see months in your brain? And that's an open-ended question. I have my answer because MK and I talked about this. It's just why it is the topic for our rot segment.
Yeah.
So I'll let you answer first, Paige. Like when I say March, April, May, June, what do you picture in your head?
Colors. I do have a form of synesthesia though, so that doesn't surprise me. But I see them as like they're associated with colors, but I picture that like a month in a calendar view. Like I see a calendar in my mind. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not like a circular time viewer or something where it's like a circle, like the calendar, or like an oval. Some people think that way. Mine's like, I think of March, I think of like a certain color and like a square box.
What color do you think of?
March?
Yeah.
Yellow.
Got it.
Really?
April? Green.
I was gonna, yeah, green for me
May,
too.
red. June, purple. Crazy, right?
Wow. That is crazy. I have colors associated, but not in that way. It's like based on like the typical what I've been like probably what color calendars would pop. Like green is March, like pink February, blue January, green December. Like mine just makes sense to like whether it's a theme of the holiday or something. But in my head, when I look at months, like I think March, I do see like a square, like a calendar. But for me, when I think of them in like when I'm planning out a content shoot, right? Like I was just emailing Bella this week and saying like, hey, we got Q1 content shoot. I think of it in my head like, okay, we have March, and then I see April, May, June, but it's kind of like in a ribbon down a line. But then when I get to September, it like curves around down, and I just can't explain that any further than that's just like what it always has been in my head. Like I see it I can see the months of the year like in a pattern in my head when I don't know. It's like a runway, and there's just like a bunch of squares of calendars laying down there. I don't know. Does anybody see like what about you, MK? Do you have any different?
Yeah, I see literally just like all of the months in rectangles, and they're all just next to each other. And like right now we're in March, so I like literally see March in front of my face, but if I can look and see the rest, but it's just like a straight line. And March for me is orange, April green. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Like,
Do you guys remember when, I mean, I don't even know how to ask this, but like back when you would listen to music on iTunes and if, okay, like the player view would show like the album cover and then that we
Mhm.
could tell like it would look like it would shuffle. So when the song would swipe, it would look like the album cover like shuffled to the bottom of the pile and then the
Yes.
next album came. That's kind
yeah,
of how my brain is with the months.
got
It's
it.
like I can see the rest, like the ones that are coming next, but they're a little bit hidden by the first one, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
get
hope
you.
somebody listens to this and goes, "What the fuck are they talking about?" Like we probably had some kind of like a loyal follower, and then they're gonna get to this part and be like, on
Oh
second
my
thought,
god.
maybe these girls are crazy.
I feel like it's something that people have in their head, but they just don't talk about. Like, I think this is like hopefully a shared experience
Yeah. Or you
amongst
just don't
everyone,
think
unless you're a
to,
psychopath.
or you just don't like one of those things you just don't think that other people think about or experience.
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny. Wow, what a way to end an episode.
Yeah.
Here we are, and here we were, and we took a couple weeks off because we really were leaning into some ailments that we all had. And this is your reminder to Paige's point that she said on this episode, our industry can lead to burnout so damn fast. And unfortunately, your body can let you know when you're burnt out before your brain or you do, your subconscious before your conscious does. So make sure to do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself before you get to that point. Don't let yourself get so stressed and so burnt out to the point where your body is physically manifesting signs to tell you that, because that's just not necessary. So drink some water, take care of yourself. If you need to make a doctor's appointment for a weird pain or a weird thing, go do it. You deserve it. Any closing
Yes, you
thoughts,
do.
friends?
Be well, be blessed.
Oh, I like that.
That's
And
it.
spread love and light.
Happy Friday, y'all.
Yes.